have to tell you that we have today so many people, especially in India, that run apologetics companies that call themselves pastors, theologians. They have to their name a doctoral degree by whatever means. They stand at these pulpits and deliver sermons on such crucial matters, but they do not know what systematic theology is. So I would think that for an undertaking like this, like Adoption Impossible, all you needed was rational thinking, critical analysis, and of course, some common sense.
And the willingness to read the Bible and commentaries on the Bible and various translations of the
Right.
Bible, and talking to people. Because, as I said, I don't have the formal education in theology to be able to just know these things. To take a very simple example, one of the most frequently quoted verses from the Hebrew scriptures is Isaiah 7:14. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they call his name Emmanuel, which they take as a prophecy of Jesus. It had nothing to do with Jesus. In fact, it had nothing to do with a young woman who was a virgin. But I didn't learn that until I spoke to Jewish people who can read Hebrew, who speak Hebrew fluently, who study their own scriptures in Hebrew, who told me that the term that's used is not virgin. It just means a young woman, and that there is a different term in the Hebrew language that means virgin. And reading that passage from Isaiah in context, you see that it describes events that would have predated the time of Jesus by 7 centuries. So, I mean, these are just the kind of things that a little digging, even at the level that I myself as a non-scholar could do, shows that a lot of the claims made by doctrinal Christianity are just nonsense.
Correct.
And the rationality um, was the realization that the notion of sin is incoherent. It means everything, and therefore it means nothing except perhaps imperfection. To just follow these things through by step in a rational kind of way reveals why I have to reject it. Not that long ago, which is reflected in the later editions of Doctrine Impossible, I came across the concept, the Christian doctrine called annihilationism. That is based upon certain readings from the book of Revelation that suggests that, yes, there is damnation, but it isn't permanent. And the reason that this doctrine came about is because people were upset at the notions that a human being could commit crimes on earth, maybe even horrible crimes, but they're finite. And yet damnation is infinite, eternal punishment, and that's just not right. So annihilationism says, well, yes, they're damned, but they're not damned forever. Hell is not eternal, that God at some point destroys them. Now, this is a minority doctrine. Most Christians do not embrace annihilationism. But let's look at it rationally. So the people who developed this notion based upon Revelation referring to second death, the people who developed this thought that they were getting around the blasphemous notions that God is a psychopathic tyrant who inflicts infinite eternal punishment for finite crime. But it doesn't do anything of the sort. If we look at it logically, then we have to ask, what is the purpose of hell? Why should they be tortured first and then destroyed? Is it to teach them a lesson? And once they learn the lesson, they get killed? I mean, it's just nonsense. But people don't think logically because they start with the assumption that It must be true. I just have to figure out how it's true. I start with the notion of, is this true? Does this make any sense? Is this tenable? And again, I'm not looking for proof that it's true. I was looking to see if it's proof that it's not true. And the reason I reject doctrine is because it is self-contradictory. And what is self-contradictory? The argument ad absurdum. What is self-contradictory is by definition false.
So you went to church for 3 short years and found that Christianity was bibliolatory. You reject the doctrine, it doesn't make sense to you. Why didn't you leave it at that? Why did you have to go tell it on the mountains that this is a doctrine impossible? Why did you feel the necessity to educate others about its absurdity, its senselessness? Why couldn't you keep it to yourself?
Because over the years that have ensued since the time I went to church, I have seen religion in the world and Christianity in America, and I speak mainly from an American perspective, as posing a deadly danger to progress in solving the world's problems. And my book is my attempt to help people question religion. Religion has existed by fighting wars with each other for dominance in the world. But one of the points I bring out in the book is that there is a war to be fought, but it's not between religions. It's not even between religion and non-religion, atheism. It's really a war between rationality and dogmatism within each group.
So you're saying it is war between rationality and dogmatism.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because rational people, you can take a large group such as Christians, and some of them are rational and some of them are dogmatists. The rational Christians that I've met, and I've met many of them, they have no difficulty with me as a non-believer. They have no difficulty with members of other religions. But dogmatists cannot abide differences in belief. You have to believe exactly as I do, or you're the enemy. On the one hand, you can look at the statistics on religious identification in America and worldwide, and we see those kind of data from the Pew Research Institute. And they will show that the proportion of the population that identifies as non-believer or unaffiliated is growing. But on the other hand, the people who are religious are growing more and more militant and fervent. And they are making dangerous, desperately dangerous inroads into civic matters of law and education that they have no business intruding on. I didn't write the book because I care what people believe. I actually don't care what people believe. And as I mentioned, I have certain spiritual beliefs, and there are a lot of atheists who sneer at my spiritual beliefs. That's okay, I don't care. So I don't really care what people believe. I care when they try to impose their beliefs on others.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so for that reason, this is why I am particularly hostile to proselytizers and apologists. And that was really the reason why I felt, you used the word compelled, and that is exactly the right word. I felt compelled to write the book, to do what I could to show people that what they are believing without much thought, because, well, this is what the church says, that they have to think about it because it simply makes no sense and be not just unprovable, but impossible. And moreover, that belief unquestioning belief in these things has led to horrible events historically, inquisitions and wars and crusades and religious oppression, horrible, horrible things.
Right.
So that was my book, was an attempt to try to um, encourage people within religions to think. You see, it's easy for a non-believer to read Doctrine Impossible and say, yeah, that's right, that's right. But I really would hope that believers, thoughtful believers, would read it and
That's
start,
my
not because I want them to give up all their beliefs and become atheists, not at all, but I want them to start realizing that the doctrines in which they have placed their faith are false and harmful and dangerous.
So let me take you back to something that you just said. You said there is a difference between having belief, that is, being faithful to the Christian God, and imposing your beliefs on others. So, why I'm stressing on this point is I have been asked on different platforms why I do this and why can't I just let people follow their faith. And I cannot stress this enough. And this is what I always say. I do not have problem with faith. So faith is good if it's working for them. But keeping one's faith to the four walls of their home is one thing, and taking their faith outside those walls, like going to their neighbor and trusting the Bible into the neighbor's hands and telling him that this is the only way and his way will damn him to hell, that's altogether a different thing. And I mean, you and I have a problem with the second aspect.
I think our views on that are the same. Yeah. Our
Right.
attitudes are the same. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, as I mentioned earlier, um, in trying to get people to question their unquestioning acceptance of the Bible as the authoritative Word of God, in doctrine as the divine truth about the world, salvation, and such. In getting them to question that, I wanted to offer an alternative to simply non belief, going from unquestioning Christian faith to atheism. And if some people want to do that, that's fine. There are a lot of people that I've met who have done exactly that. They were believers. Some of them were clergy. At some point in their life, they began thinking and said, "No, this is just not right. This is wrong. This is false." And so um, they left their faith and they became non-believers. And that's fine if that works for them. But for people who don't feel comfortable with atheism either, I wanted to share my belief in what I call spirituality. And um, the fortunate thing about my view about spirituality is that the concept is extremely simple and it doesn't have any downside to it. It's not provably true, but I happen to believe it's true. And it's this: there is sentient life in the universe. That is, sentient means aware of one's own existence. I am a sentient person. A dog is a sentient dog. A dog is aware of its own existence. A frog is aware of its own existence. If there are creatures on other planets that are aware of their own existence, they are sentient also. I believe that all sentient life is connected as if by some kind of web. It's not a physical structure, can't be demonstrated or proven, but I believe that there is a kind of connection between sentient beings. And when we are aware of that connection, here's what happens. The way I treat others, other people, animals, the way I treat other sentient beings reflects right back at me as if by resonance along the strands of that web. And so I avoid causing harm because the hurt that I may cause would reflect right back to me and hurt me. This is what I consider the mechanism of compassion. We all recognize that compassion exists, and people have different notions about how it arises, and they may be correct. I'm not claiming that my view of a web of sentience is true. I can't prove it. I could be wrong about it, but there's no downside to it because it is the by conscious awareness of it, it is what guides my actions to be of a compassionate nature. That's the reason, for example, why I'm a vegan. I don't eat any animal-derived foods or use animal-derived products or take part in or support in exploitation of animals in any way because they are sentient creatures. And I feel connection via this web. So this is my view of spirituality.
You used a word for this in your book. You called it cosmic mindfulness. But did you know this is a concept of Sanatana Dharma, which in common terms is referred to as Hinduism?
No,
So
I do not know that. I confess to being criminally ignorant.
So you are at the door, Stephen, and I invite you in. I invite you to come and learn with me and the rest of the mankind what it is that binds us. How is it that we're all connected? And what is the sentience that you have an inkling about? So I warmly invite you in to explore the ancient wisdom of India. Now, there are people that are willing to teach you. So you're already at the door. So it's just a matter of stepping in.
Well, I appreciate your invitation and I will explore this because it is something that I do believe in. I use the term cosmic mindfulness in my book to describe a kind of a higher version, a meta version of spiritual connection. And it's sort of like um, the sum total of my experiences in life, the things that I've learned, the things that I've done, contribute towards growing cosmic mindfulness. Um, this is actually a concept that was developed by a Christian thinker, Teilhard de Chardin, who was a scientist also, in which he referred to the cosmic Christ, the omega point, the final point of evolution, not just biological evolution, but the whole direction of existence pointing to that. So I believe that sentient life contributes to this cosmic mindfulness, in whatever term is used, cosmic Christ, omega point. And at the end, um, that entity, cosmic mindfulness, would have the sum total of every experience of every sentient being that has ever lived anywhere. That is omniscience. Is that not omniscience, all knowingness? We refer to God as all knowing. Biblically, that's not true, but the church invented the notion that God is all knowing. And wouldn't that be all knowing? And I want to clarify, this is a point I made in the book. If I say that cosmic mindfulness is evolving by having a material knowledge experience accrued to it by our individual finite lives, then cosmic mindfulness is growing and evolving now. How can we talk about it, therefore, existing in the presence if it doesn't exist until the end time. And my answer to that is to make an analogy with relativity from physics. Very, very simple concept in relativity. You have two observers looking at the same pair of events. One observer is stationary, not moving. The other is moving past at extreme speed. And they're watching the same pair of events. One observer sees the two events taking place simultaneously. The other sees the two events, the same two events, taking place sequentially, one after the other. Who is right? They both are. Each is right within his own frame of reference. This isn't wordplay. This is absolutely basic relativity in physics. They are both correct. There is no single standard preferred view that is correct. It is related to its frame of reference. So in our finite frame of reference, cosmic mindfulness is evolving. In cosmic mindfulness frame of reference, it exists throughout all of time.
So I want to point out to another thing that you have mentioned in your book. While talking about the essentials of salvation, you said that one cannot neglect words or actions as an essential ingredient to salvation.
Yes.
Okay, so my point is you're actually referring to karma. Did you know that?
Okay. Again, I will, I promise, I will explore these ideas, these Hindu teachings.
Look, I don't usually suggest this to anybody because I'm a learner myself. I'm really at the very elementary level. But your mention of the importance of words and the idea that all beings are connected and that there is sentience in every being is indicative of your understanding of the universe from the Sanatana philosophy angle.
I'd like to point out, as long as you bring out faith and works, because this is has been a debate within Christianity, and of course, my book is mainly about Christian doctrine on sin and salvation.
Yeah, it's the James versus Paul, right?
Oh yes, the Epistle of James says that faith without works is dead; it's meaningless. But Paul, especially in Ephesians, but various other books also, says that we are saved by faith alone and not by works. The important thing is that Christians have been divided on this point. The Roman Catholic Church did not discount works at all. Not certainly not. In fact, they viewed works as important. Faith as absolutely important. There was never any question about that. It was with the Protestant Reformation and the intense, obsessive focus on the Bible as the infallible, inerrant Word of God that they took Paul as the lead and said, no, it's faith alone, purely faith. Interestingly enough, all of these Christians who supposedly worship Jesus as God, they ignore what Jesus said. Now, Jesus never said, now I will explain whether salvation is based on faith or works or both. But he did say, we are known by our fruit. Matthew 7:20. We are known by our fruit, by our works, our acts, our deeds. The most famous teaching of all attributed to Jesus, the parable of the Samaritan, was entirely about a good work that was performed by a person of no faith at all, or not the right faith. So Christians, this is why I say that Christianity tends to ignore Jesus, his teachings. They focus on Jesus as an invented figure in church doctrine. They shout his name, but they ignore his teachings. Earlier in this interview, I pointed out that Jesus, in 3 separate places in the gospel accounts, indicates that not everyone is a sinner. And yet, church doctrine is adamant that everyone is a sinner who needs to repent. Everyone who is not saved is damned.
Right.
So that this is contrary to Jesus' teachings.
Right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Stephen. You have offered our viewers a very fresh perspective on Christian doctrines and why such a doctrine is just not possible.
Thank you, Esther. I've enjoyed being here. I've enjoyed speaking with you. And yes, I will be following up on that. I just want to mention very briefly, the book is available. Doctrine Impossible is available both in paperback and via Kindle ebook through Amazon. And people who want to look for a description of the book and excerpts to see whether they want to or might be interested in ordering it can find that at my website, which is www.rationality-and-faith.com. Again, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to have been here today.
Thanks and namaste. So viewers, thank you for watching. We will see you in another episode. Until then, namaste to you. And I really encourage every one of you to actually go through his book to understand the basic tenets of Christianity. Stephen has actually raised some very, very important commonsensical questions. It's available on Kindle.